Well, welcome to another episode of Rimshots. Sean. I think we're going to do it on the Rock Rage Radio Network, which we're having a lot of fun with Thursday nights at midnight, 11 o'clock Eastern time in the States. I have a brand new friend by way of my friend Jamie Roberts, the wonderful Raquel Bruno. How are you?
I am good. How are you doing?
Great, great, great. So Jamie had a post which I made a comment on, and she's like, "Oh my God, you again." I can't do Jamie's voice, but you two have to meet. So for my viewers and listeners on this particular one, give us a little background on the wonderful Raquel Bruno.
So I am, by way of my work, I am a talent producer, talent booker, executive producer. I've worked for years. I was at MTV as well as Nickelodeon, launched TV Land. I worked at VH1. And about 18 years ago, I started my own company called Drive Entertainment Group. And since then, I've worked on everything from talent producing the Herb Albert Is documentary, most recently the Run DMC Kings from Queens documentary that just came out. I worked on American Idol for a season. I did Paris Hilton's cooking show. I worked closely with Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols. You name it. I've worked on whether they're getting talent on a red carpet to a documentary to a series. It's something that I've worked on. And I love it because I get to make my own schedule. I have two littles that I took a long time to get here on this planet. And so being able to have some autonomy around my schedule as well as the projects that are near and dear to my heart. I'm a musician's kid. So it's very important that I'm always around creatives. It's what I do.
You rip off that resume, and I'm thinking I made a bagel for myself this morning. Well,
Well,
that's an
it's a I'm ancient. I've been around for a while. No, I'm kidding. I just don't sleep, I guess, apparently.
Well, I want to ask you right out of the gates, and so I had the opportunity to interview Robin Flans a couple weeks ago. So Robin is an author. She wrote for Modern Drummer for over 30 years. Best friends with Jeff Beccaro and Ed Shaughnessy, and she was telling me she was working for People Magazine and In Style, and nobody had actually seen her. And then she went to an event, and somebody saw her, and she felt she lost a lot of work because of ageism.
Hmm.
Do you think that's a thing, or clearly because of how busy you are, it doesn't appear to you that it is? Do you what's your point of view on that?
It's a thing for women, and
Yeah.
it's definitely a thing for sure. We're in a youth-oriented business, and so that's one of the reasons why I actually recently started another arm of my business called Thrive with Drive, where I'm offering coaching and mentoring for the next generation, because I'm the kind of person that wants to create my own opportunities. I can't wait for someone else to open the door for me. I'll kick down the door and do what I need to do. But there is ageism. There, it definitely exists. I mean, we still aren't really getting paid to our male counterparts in the industry, and that's something I'm very much a part of. I joined the Producers Guild a couple years back, and I'm glad that I did because I come from a long line of amazing shows that I've worked on and some great mentors I've had the chance to do that with. But it is something that exists. I mean, a lot of the times you'll see, even on in regular media, you'll see most of the time an older male host can get through it, but a female host, it's almost like they age out. And so we're trying to normalize the other part of people's careers. There's a woman that I work with at MTV. She has a great podcast called Second Act Success, and it talks about people having a second career or third career. And that's one of the things that I'm helping creatives do with my new line of business, which is like, look, don't let someone write your own song for you. If you really want to go after something, then you go after it, and but you have to make sure you do the steps in which to go for it. And so that's why I'm always hustling, always moving, because if you get stagnant in one thing, ageism will take you out. And so you have to always be learning and creative.
Well, I love that. And so with this new arm of your business, what I guess are you finding with because I deal with people that are younger than me. I mean, the term act your age, whatever. I mean, what is my age? I don't even know anymore. But
Right.
um, you speak with young people that they go and they research something and they take it as gospel because it was found on the internet. And what's your experience been? Has it been all over the map? Is it pretty much a normal process with these kids?
It's all over the map. I think one thing that I try to hammer home, especially with my young professionals that are getting into the business or in the business and they're trying to figure out where they want to go, is that you can't trust what's on social media because everything is glossed over, filtered out. Instagram, quick TikTok stories. I mean, it is hard work and you have to have your grit that goes along with it. And you have to also do your research. I mean, it's pros and cons of where we are in the internet these days. pros in the fact that you have LinkedIn, you can do your research, you can really study up on folks that you're working with and want to get to know, and businesses. We didn't have any of that. We
Hmm.
had, here's an encyclopedia, boom, trying to figure out, what this company did 50 years ago. You have, you can really get to understand what people are about by doing some research and then asking questions. Not everything is a gloss, a lot of folks, and I don't like putting any generation in any one box because everybody is different. Humans are humans. We're made up all differently. We all have unique thumbprints for a reason. And so I think you take a little bit of bits and pieces of each generation and you kind of glean some knowledge from it and say, I think it's great, honestly, that the Gen Zs at this point are saying, I don't care that this is the way that it's been. I want to change that up because this isn't fair. This toxic workplace or what have you. They have their own set of education going, nope, I'm good. I'm going to find something else. And I really admire them for that. But on the flip side of it, also, it's saying, okay, there is something to be learned by the Gen Xers that have been through it and understanding like you have to constantly be in the trenches and work for it. You can't just expect things to happen at the snap of a finger. You have to do your due diligence, you have to work with people, you have to build relationships. It takes time. Flowers don't just automatically bloom.
Hmm.
There's stages in each and every process of seeing a beautiful bloom at the end of the day. So I think it's just you have to kind of pick pieces from each group and say, okay, there's pros and cons of every generation. And it's really doing the due diligence and studying and what you want to do and how and then actually putting the work in.
So I was never a professional journalist. I was a musician. I'm a drummer. I was playing. COVID hit. I was doing kind of a community radio show about sports. I couldn't do that, so I just started interviewing some of my musicians friends. 4 years later, I've got this podcast that blew up by accident. I mean, it wasn't. I didn't sit down and strategically plot how it was going to go. So one of the things that I do, rightly or wrongly, when I'm presented a guest is I might not actually do the research on them because I like to ask questions and I like to formulate my next question from listening.
Right.
In everything that you've done, have you sat there and you've gone, okay, and I'm going to guess maybe a little bit. You see somebody that you're representing or you're pushing, behind the scenes, and you go, man, I'm just as good as them, or maybe even better. I'm not going to say that, but you ever get that feeling?
Yes, in fact, I get that often sometimes with the decision makers of shows that I work on. There's people in-house, if I'm on a production, I go, oh my God. And I mean, there's two sides of it. There's folks that, believe it or not, have the imposter syndrome. Or like, oh my God, I don't know how you do it. And there's other people that just jump in and you're like, this person can do it. Why? Of course I
Yeah.
can do it too. I think it's I think it's having the ability to ask the questions because a lot of folks don't like to ask questions. They don't want to appear dumb. They have analysis paralysis. They want to, and I'm kind of like, I just jump in and then I'm like, all right, then I'll perfect it. But it took a long time to get to that point where if not, in fact, that's one of the things I talked about recently. If not you, then who?
Hmm.
So it's like you got to jump in, you got to go after it because life is too short. I've had a couple of losses during COVID. I always live my life as carpe diem. You got to jump in if it's something you truly want to do. And I love the fact that, it's kind of a combination of like you do a little bit of your research, but then you also let the conversation flow. And I like that you had a structure of where you knew you wanted to go with me, but then you also were like, let me ask the question so we spontaneously get some answers on and keep it fresh. And I think that's why you do so well with what you're doing because you're also a musician. And I talk about this often. Musicians have a keen understanding and a shorthand. You speak almost without words, and that's what I love about it. You speak in beats and rhythms, and I think that that's the cadence of what you want to have in your conversations as well. It's reading a room, it's understanding how the other person's going to flow with you and see if it's going to vibe. So it just depends.
And look, I have zero problem with making myself look stupid because I can flash a smile and bring her back pretty quickly. It's not too bad. But one of the two concepts that I've always had when I started this was the first one was I never wanted to be like the Chris Farley sketch on Saturday Night Live when he was interviewing Paul McCartney. Like that's just, I don't want to be that guy. I've seen so many podcast hosts interview somebody that is at a certain level and they act like a fan, and then at a lower level and they're kind of treating them crappy. So it was just always no. And the second part is, hey, we're sitting down over a coffee, over a beer, and we're just shooting
Yeah.
the breeze, and whatever happens, happens. And I think that's where some of the coolest conversations come from. because I didn't realize what your background was. I'm sitting there going, 20 years ago, you would have been somebody I was trying to meet. And now here I am
Probably.
chatting with you. But I probably wasn't. I wouldn't have been as. I wouldn't have been well equipped to actually meet with you because what would I have had to say? I didn't know what the hell I was doing, right?
Yes, but you also, I mean, I love musicians. I love, the ability to create and actually go after your dreams. I mean, that's one thing, like I said, my parents being musicians, they also were teachers, but they went after their dreams. My mom's a singer, dad's a songwriter, and they never let go of that. They were like, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And so I don't want to, and I have a huge amount of respect for musicians that just because that's not an easy road to go. It's not as supported as it should be. Music programs across the US at least have been cut in their programs. I mean, I think it's a great thing that you pursue that. By the way, I love all your Kiss dolls behind you. We would have been chatting about that.
I did do my part to send Gene and Paul's kids to university, no question about it.
Completely. So I think that it's enjoying the conversations with people. I think it's exactly that. You want to have it be a conversation that makes sense. And I think that should be the same with interviews as well. I think it's the ability to listen to the other person. It's the ability to ask questions. And even though, you and I may not have a difficulty asking the questions, a lot of people do. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to seem stupid or look dumb or what have you. And
Sure.
that's something I always say, especially anyone that I'm working with, like ask the questions. You want to, you're going to go, and then it's going to be worse because then it's like, oh my God, I should have asked that question 2 weeks ago. And then we have a problem on a project or whatever.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, feeling dumb is kind of like the this phrase, "You're making me mad." To me, that's a choice, right? If you say something and I get mad, you can't make me mad. I can only
right,
make myself mad.
right.
You can't make me feel dumb because I could be with you in a room of 10 people, and if you say something and everybody's laughing, well, it's how I react to it.
Hmm.
And this is how I kind of carry myself, and sometimes I get accused of being an egomaniac, but no, it's so difficult to actually deal with people on a regular basis. You got to
Yeah.
put something in your head to kind of elevate you above the noise.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes sense to you.
No, it does. And I think if I can speak, again, of the ageism part of it, or even being a woman, I mean, unfortunately, we've been, there's a lot of stuff going, a war against women, and we can talk about that separately. But right now it's having the confidence to stand in your power. And if someone is blinded by your light, then they're not your people.
Right.
But it takes like you've been on stages, you've been in front of a crowd, you had that muscle memory of going, I am a musician and I'm going to give it my all and leave it on the stage. So you've had that acumen to do that. Not everybody has that same experience. I've been a DJ. I forced myself to be DJing while I was pregnant, but I've also been a DJ for 25 years, and so I love doing it. And so you just have to throw yourself out there. I get trolls all the time.
Mhm.
Who's this older woman? Appearance things, whatever. And I'm just like, I laugh about it because I'm like, if you're that miserable, that's on you. Here's my mirror. Look at it and bye. Like,
I love it. Well, I tell you, I got a great state of New Jersey story for you because our friend Raquel is a born and bred New Jersey. What is it? New Jersey and New Jersey A? How do you guys
Jersey
refer to
strong. We're just, yeah, Jerseyans, Jersey strong.
Jerseyans? Um, so I had somebody. I always have this saying that I don't really care who's in the audience when I play. I don't care if there's drummers. I don't care what they say. I play for myself. And I had a guy come up to me one time and he said, "How can you do that?" And I said, "It's very simple. 1993, I'm in Toronto playing at the Gasworks New Year's Eve. I'm on a three-band bill. I'm in the middle. I go and I think I have a pretty good set, and I hear, "Damn, you fucking suck!" And I look, and it was Sebastian Bach from Skid Row. And so I always tell people here at home, if Sebastian Bach told me I sucked and I lived through it, I don't give a crap what anybody in my hometown says. Get over yourself, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, anyway, we'll have, I'm sure, some more Jersey connections. Just we're here on the Rock Rage Radio Network. Just before we take our first break, I do want to get a Jersey piece in because so much entertainment culture from that state. We talked about The Sopranos, my favorite thing, music with Springsteen and Bon Jovi and Frankie and the Knockouts and Southside Johnny and da 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 da. Yet it still gets this bad rap every now and again. Like New Jersey gets this, they call it like a swamp and all that stuff. What would you say to somebody about the great state of Jersey? Because I love it. I've been there many times and I absolutely adore the place.
Sugar Hill Gang had their label here, even though they started out on the other side of the river. You have had Dionne Warwick, Whitney Houston. You've had some of the greats come out of here. And so you know what? Then you don't have to come visit. I'm okay with that because it's the best kept secret for us. The Smithereens, one of my all-time favorite rock bands, came out of here. R.I.P. Pat. Asbury, Asbury Park, the Stone Pony. I mean, there's brilliant. You can be in the mountains or you can be down in the shore. You can be anywhere. And there's so many bands that have come out of here that it's just like we haven't even scratched the surface. And so if people want to mock it, go right ahead. I'm okay with it. It's so funny. I actually would avoid telling people I was from New Jersey. I wanted to be known as a New Yorker, and I still am. I had my apartment in the city. And now, as I've gotten older and I actually moved back into my childhood home, this is actually my old my
Nice.
old bedroom, which is now my office. I would have it no other way. My house was supposedly built by the architect of the George Washington Bridge. Perfect. There's history here, and there's a lot of music history here. And I think that we'll always be the little engine that could. And if you don't want to come visit, that's okay too. I love it.
I'm gonna get down there soon because I'd love to get to Satriali's and grab a mortadella sandwich there and sit out there and have the little espressos and stuff. So it's a great spot. And I just watched the Bon Jovi documentary a couple of weeks ago, and my takeaway about that whole scene is regardless of how big you were, everybody seemed to support each other, which anybody can say. In a lot of music scenes, you do not get that, period. It just doesn't happen. We're going to take our first break here, and then we're going to come back with the wonderful Raquel Bruno on Rock Rage Radio Network after this. Welcome back to Rimshots with Sean right here on the Rock Rage Radio Network. I can't believe I was having such a hard time saying that 3 hours in a row. It was like Dr. Seuss or something to me, but I have it down now. I'm here with Raquel Bruno. There's a place called Brunello here in Halifax. And we were talking Jersey just before we went to our first break. And, that great kind of, in Toronto, they call it the Golden Horseshoe, where it's, Toronto down to kind of Windsor and into Motown. Tons of culture in the entertainment business in that area. Must have been incredible to kind of grow up, by the lights of Broadway and then the Yankee Stadium and Brooklyn and Queens and over across to Jersey. Talk about that a little bit because it just seems like such a creative place to be.
It really is. So my mom is from Brooklyn. My dad's from upstate New York, up in Rochester, which is another little pocket of incredible musicians. I go up there all the time. Met some of the best up there. My uncles all play with Frank Sinatra. My uncle Jerry played with Frank Sinatra. If you watch The Godfather, speaking of The Sopranos, watch The Godfather. That's my uncle Sam in the wedding scene playing the upright bass. So my
Oh,
very first memories, and I've talked about this, is on the recording studio floor on 7th Avenue South. My mom was recording music. My dad was, basically her arranger for everything. So I have very early memories, or like my dad driving me to Tower Records on a random Wednesday when I was in middle school, driving to Tower on Bleecker Street, just picking up one of his favorite records, being able to go to the Grammys because my dad was like the seventh member of the New York chapter of NARAS. So I have so many and I always wanted to just be in New York City. I loved it. But I also realized, and I went to school, it's funny, I was telling my son this morning walking to school because he's going to the same school that I went to. And he said, "Well, Mommy, when did you start at this school?" I said, "Well, I was in second grade when I started here because he's in kindergarten." I said, "But for 2 years, I was commuting with my mom to PS 33 in Chelsea, and I loved it. I loved everything about New York, the culture, but then I would be able to come home and then I'd have the trees and be able to have, the pool, the local pool. And I just love being able to be in both. I had the best of both worlds. My parents could be in the city in no time. I'd go to shows all the time. I mean, I was a flyer girl for Limelight. I was handing out flyers for Communion for Dave Kendall and Tony Fletcher. And so I was, in my teens doing that, driving right over the bridge, going to the Limelight and doing that. And just because I just love being around music. And I was a club kid early on too. My parents trusted me enough that I could do that. But I was a Tunnel, Limelight, you name it, I was there. And I'm not talking about New York City back in the day, just like the club scene was outrageous and I loved it because it was all different types of music. That's a whole other part of my world. The house music scene. That's a lot of stuff that I spin actually. So I was a bit of like a punk on one side and goth on one side, and then house music on the other. So being able to see all those cultures come together in New York was amazing. And then in New Jersey, going like I said, when I went to places in New Jersey, I would go to the Stone Pony. That's where I got to interview bands like Mary's Danish. I would go down to City Gardens. We used to joke around called Shitty Gardens, but I saw every band. I mean, it was like a fire trap, that place. I'm lucky I'm even standing here talking, but I would see like Meat Beat Manifesto and all these great bands that would come through. And then I went to school at Rowan in Jersey. I stayed. I wanted to go to NYU. My parents said, well, you can go to a state school and we'll pay for it, or you can go to NYU and then you'll be stuck paying for it. And as much as I really wanted to go to NYU, I knew at the time probably was the right decision to go to a state school. And then I ran the radio station. And I'm proud to say I actually donated because WGLS, which is now Rowan Radio, which is why I love Rowan. I mean, I love radio. I still go back to it. I helped to run MTV Radio, brought a lot of bands through. Radio is a key element for me. And I negotiated with them. I said, listen, I will donate to you. And that's why I'm like, go Rowan. If you keep Rowan Radio music only, if you change it to talk, I'm not going to donate. And you know what? They kept their word. It's music still, because I think it's really important for kids to understand what it is to program music, to have them
Mhm.
have the ability to put new music on the air. And now I have the music library in my name there. And that is one of my most proud moments, because I spent hours of my life for 4 years when I was there programming all the music that went into that library. So New Jersey is a beautiful place. It's just we get a bad rap because some people don't explore what Jersey really is about. It is really a garden state, but you may not believe it, but it's true.
I've been there many times and I love it. The radio angle is interesting to me because one of my good friends that I went to school with, she has here in Halifax, she's got the number one afternoon radio show in the city. Yet she can't program any of her own material because it comes from some person in Toronto. And so in Halifax, we kind of have this thing like where if you come from Toronto and you come down here and try to tell us, you're from the big city, we're going to reject you. So she always tries to put the spin on it to make it Haligonian, is what we call ourselves. Do you find there's a lot of that going on that now down in the States? Because in Canada, really, radio is not much of a factor.
I think there's always going to be, the localized, like, the big city versus the smaller places. But at the same time, like, you think about it, like Bruce goes down to Asbury Park and makes sure that he always stays with his roots. Like he'll
Yeah.
play one of the biggest venues in the world, but you'll go and find him. It's almost like when comedians go to the Comedy Cellar or where have you in the Village in New York to work out their stuff. It's almost musicians do the same thing, and I think they like to go where their roots are. So, but I will tell you, again, New Jersey has just been such a hotbed of so many amazing places and people that have started from here. I mean, look, Bruce Willis, born, raised New Jersey.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson, born, raised New Jersey. There's so many that come from here. It's funny because I forget now, of course, now I laugh because if you go down to all the different like stops in New Jersey on the turnpike, now we have the John Bon Jovi stop. I mean, it's just like, but it's perfect because it's
Sure.
so, you know what I mean? It's so us.
Well, I mean, and they've all earned their spot. I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, say what you want about John, you can't be denied his success.
No,
It's
not at
there.
all.
I'm a fan. Tico Torres is probably one of my favorite drummers ever.
Ever.
Um, I
You know who else is from, speaking of drummers, you know who else is from New Jersey? One of the best drummers I still have seen to this day, who I adore,
who?
Clem Burke.
Oh, from Blondie, of course. Yes,
Comes
absolutely.
home.
That was a man that he to this day he can still slam those things and do it politely and not abuse the drums. But yeah, I love his playing. Um, and it's a funny Tico story. I came across a thing with Huey Lewis, and Huey Lewis is he lost his hearing, he can't play anymore. And typical Jersey fashion, he was golfing and he was in a foursome with Tico, and Tico says to him, Hugh, how come you're not out there playing anymore? And Huey Lewis is like, well, you haven't you heard? I can't hear anymore. I can't play live. And Huey said there was like a 2 or 3 second pause, and Tico took a puff of smoke, what are you gonna do? And that was it, right? So
We're
Jersey to
straight
me.
shooters, and we are straight shooters in this
Yeah,
state. That is for sure.
I love it. I
You
love
know,
it.
and I think you kind of have to. I mean, you know, little Steven. I mean, they all there's so many. Debbie Harry's from here as well. I mean, some, you know, there's so many icons that come from the state, and we kind of like go, oh, we're more like New York adjacent. But like I said, I've learned to embrace my New Jersey armor because
Yep.
we've earned it. We've earned it.
Um, are you familiar with the show The Trailer Park Boys?
I'm familiar with it. I haven't seen it, but I am
Okay,
familiar
so
with
the premise is basically it was crafted by a guy that I know really well that I grew up with, and I didn't see it, and then I moved back from Toronto, and it was like somebody created a show about a bunch of people I grew up with. This was brilliant,
it.
and it became this worldwide phenomenon. They all live around here, right? Because this is where they grew up. These are their roots, and that's the vibe that I get about Jersey. I mean, I moved back from Toronto to Halifax because I wanted to be close to the ocean,
Yep.
and it was a whole vibe of people and stuff. Um, your resume when you first came on, it was you had a cadence to it. It was like, I don't know if it would fit on one piece of paper. I'm going to guess a couple of things. One, you're kind of a hybrid. You were doing something and went to the next thing because an opportunity came up or it tickled the creative piece. And so I guess, let me know if that's the case. And then two, of all that stuff that you do, is there one or two or maybe three things that you like a little bit better than the rest of them? Because you're doing an awful lot of things.
I love create, and yes, it is, I see opportunity and I create something from that. And I love being around my fellow creatives. I am happiest when I'm on a set where we've created something from nothing. I love being able to tell the story. Like I said, I worked on the Herb Albert Is documentary with an amazing director, John Scheinfeld. We've worked together for years. We also did the Sergio Mendes doc together. We worked on the Gary Marshall docuseries that we had air on ABC. And that was full circle because I worked with Gary when I was at MTV and Nickelodeon. We had TV Land. We aired all of his shows. So we did his documentary after he passed, but being able to tell his story and talk about all the transitions that he made in his career, whether going from all the sitcoms and then to have to be taken seriously with Beaches, like John laying out that story, and me being able to help bring the talent to that to be talking heads with it is just was really important. So I love being able to create something and say I had a hand in that. I brought that person. I know the story behind how we were able to get that person to be on camera. Growing up, I always tell the story. Growing up, my mom, before she met my dad, the summer before she met my dad, she went out to Los Angeles. She was about to be a teacher in Brooklyn. She went out to LA to pursue her singing. And she met a young gentleman that happened to be living in the same garden apartments off of Hollywood Boulevard. This is the mid 60s. And she's like, "What's your name?" And she's kind of chomping gum in her Brooklyn way. And it turned out to be Casey Kasem. And he loved her, he loved her voice. And so growing up, I always heard, "Oh, I know the voice of Shaggy." And I'm 7 years old going, "Wait, what?" Like I could not comprehend this. And sure enough, he introduced her to a brand new label opening up, A&M, gave her
Ah,
a record deal, and she turned it down because her mom wanted her to come back and start teaching in the fall, and she did. And she had a small record deal out of New York and felt that she wasn't going to be loyal to them if she did that. So could have been, I joke around and say, "Is Casey my dad?" And she's like, "What?" Your father's your father. We joke about it all the time. But and then so years later, so being able to work on Herb Albert was just amazing because then I was able to tell the whole documentary and from the perspective of like growing up hearing my mom's story about that. And then also years later, I worked with TV Land, and Casey was our voice of Nick at Night Countdown, I think it was. And so I told the publicist, she knew the story, good friend of mine, and told him the story. And then sure enough, he's like, he remembered my mom. And I was able to go out to LA and I sat him down. I used to run a zine called Aquatool and I did a huge piece and I sat with him for hours, talk about radio. I loved growing up listening to him. He's one of the best storytellers there is. And I asked him about the Howard Stern scenario and all that. And he said, "You know what? You always have to remember that the mic is always on."
Ah, yeah, it is, right?
But what a great man. What a great man. And he never had a chance to see my mom again, but I was glad I was able to kind of bring him the message of like my mom sends her best and she thought you were amazing and thanks you for the help, the journey that you helped her with her singing.
Um, a theme that I always talk about because my whole life is this, and it's networking. Like every opportunity that I've ever had, I've met somebody who, and when I met them, I didn't say give me stuff. I would meet them and then try to be useful to them, try to lead them to something. And if it came back and to me in any sort of way, great. If it didn't, that was fine too. And oftentimes it did. And I'm hearing once again a story of networking. I want to say when I talk networking, everybody, oh, here he goes again with networking. It's a thing. I bring it up all the time. You're once again living proof of this, and your mom and everything, and your dad. I mean, your dad was a musician. Hopefully, he wasn't the stand-up bass player in Buddy Rich's band there in the bus tapes. That would have been terrible. But yeah,
So piano and alto sax is my
awesome.
dad. Yeah.
But talk about that because as I'm talking to you, I'm getting the networking piece from you. I mean, this conversation came up because of networking.
My whole life is networking. The same boss I had as an intern was my same boss I went to work for at Nickelodeon and then became my very first client. Her name is Diane Robina, who gave me an opportunity to work at Nickelodeon when I kicked down the door in senior year of high school. And they were like, nope, you're too young. And then somehow led to her and Susan Kearns, who I miss. She was my first boss who I lost to cancer. My relationships are sacred. As a talent booker, as a talent producer, I always want to be in service to others, especially being, like I said, a musician's kid. That's the other part. You had asked earlier, what else do I love to do? I love giving platforms to creatives. I love
Mhm.
being able to give talent, whether it's Glenn Matlock, who's playing with Blondie, speaking of Clem, working with him, giving him a platform, I love Martha Davis of the Motels or Gary Newman. Like those are all my greats that I grew up with. Anything I can do to help them because they were such a big influence on my life is what I'm going to do.
Mhm.
And so there's people that I've been friends with since one of my old, I have to give her a shout out, Sharon Sperber. She was my first rep when I was 17 at Arista. We just spent time together and went together to Cruel World. I mean, I'm 52. So, we've known each other a very long time, and I honor those relationships because they mean everything to me. And it's just a matter of sometimes your people are your people and you
Mhm.
want to always kind of go through, there's a reason in a season, a lifetime. Some people are meant to go on with you, some people are not. But what's most important to me are relationships. I love being able to say to someone starting their own business, like, oh, I know a publicist, I know Jamie Roberts, I know this one, that one. I can help connect the dots. In fact, we just did a huge thing called In the Mix where I helped creatives come together in a very tough time in our business right now. I wanted to create a safe space for people to come and talk to each other, see how we can connect the dots and help people out. I mean, we can't be isolated. We're souls having a human experience right now. And if we can't help each other out, then what are we doing?
No, I agree. And you know, the whole I talked I when COVID hit, I talked to a lot of people, and my theme to everybody was if you're going to sit and mope and say that everything's shut down, you're going to be in a rough spot because anybody that took advantage of learning technology or take a new skill or whatever, if they were doing that when everything opened up, they were going to be that much ahead of the game. And sure enough, I'm a lot smarter than I look because that's kind of exactly what happened.
Mhm.
Did you use some of those networks when COVID hit to kind of keep your momentum going and make sure that you weren't having to start fresh and you know push the push the car up the hill?
Yes, I mean, luckily I had a retainer client. I had Sci-Fi Wire, so we had to pivot, and I had to help them. I had two things. I had American Idol. I was like looking forward to. I just realized ink on my finger. That's fun. I had American Idol. I was like, what is that? I had American Idol, which I was so excited. I mean, I'd gone to meet with them. We're ready to go, and then everything shut down. And we were one of the very first shows to become virtual, which I was very proud of because we had to figure out how to scrub the equipment, how to get, how to keep it moving, how to really, and that's something that that show had never done. It's a live show. So being able to be on the ground level for that was really exciting. And even though it's a bummer because I wasn't in this, I wasn't in California with them, we were able to make something great out of a really terrible situation. And I'm very proud of that season. I worked with Sci-Fi Wire to create content digitally, and we came up with three different ways on how do we still engage any new sci-fi. Because remember, they were still rolling out content because, it's 6 months to a year sometimes, either with films or TV shows that had been ready to go anyway. And so it's how do we figure out doing junkets that were online. So I was making sure I kept our group going, and I was we did that for a full year, which was great. And then I was able to also I got to work with Brad Gillis. I helped him with his music library from Night Ranger. I got to work
Ah, one of my
with him.
favorites.
He is one of my favorite people, and we got to work together for 4 months and figuring out how do we get his music placed in different locations. And I also got to work with John Oates. I EP'd an amazing nonprofit. We worked raising funds for Feeding America. And we did that we got performances from all of his musician friends, from Dave Grohl to you name it, across the board. They all contributed a performance, either one they recorded for us or one that was an older performance that they gave us to use, and we created the Oates Song Fest, which was brilliant. So I was able to expand what I do in different ways as well. And I did a couple of those. I did one with John. I did a few other locally where we got talent to either do a message or a performance or what have you, and contribute that way to get folks to really help others out during COVID, which was great.
Fantastic. We're going to take one more break. And then, as you were talking, I had a swirl of questions and topics I want to bring up. So we're going to be right back with Raquel Bruno on Rock Radio Network after this. Well, welcome back to Rimshots with Sean right here on the Rock Rage Radio Network. I am here with the wonderful Raquel Bruno, my brand new friend who I met through Jamie Roberts. And it's funny, we were talking networking. And a quick Jamie story. Known her for almost 4 years now, and she went on a trip to Los Angeles, and she posted a picture of her and this other girl that I know whose name is Raquel on a patio. And I sent her a text like, "How do you know Raquel?" And she, I can't do Jamie's voice. "How do you think Raquel got to know you?" I'm like, "Of course, right?" And so it's funny because I'm not the type of person when I meet somebody, like I don't kiss ass. I don't, what you see is what you get. If you don't like me, fine. If you do like me, great. But I'm respectful of the connection. I don't misuse it. I will not purposely put somebody's name in a bad way, and I think it works for me. Is that a rule that you try to follow yourself?
100%. I think that's why I'm known as much more of an East Coast booker. I mean, because I just cut to the chase. I don't want to waste people's time. I'm very much a straight shooter. I will tell
Mhm.
you exactly what's going on. That's the Sag nature of who I am. I'm just very honest, sometimes to a fault, but at the same time, like I said earlier, life is too short to BS. And I mean, there's a lot of yes people sometimes, not so much. It's gotten a lot better in the industry, but there's a lot of times there's yes people, and I'm usually in the room going, wait a second, let's be a little bit more realistic here. But I also like to be solution based. I'm just not going to be a naysayer. I'm going to say, okay, that doesn't look like that could work, especially as a booker. I don't know if that's feasible. So here's options A, B, and C. But I'm very respectful of people's relationships. I always try to give people credit where credit is due. It's just super important. I mean, because for me, I've said this before and I really mean it. It is a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, I've been in this industry a long time. I really value people's relationships and the relationship I have to them. And that goes with talent too. I mean, there's a way of I came up through the school of John Ritter. I had the
Oh,
absolute honor and privilege to work with him early on in my career. And I loved, grew up in Hollywood. He grew up because his dad was Tex Ritter, famous country singer and actor. And he treated everyone with common courtesy and respect, everyone. And I was like, you know what? If this guy can do that and call your name and speak to the assistant and to the CEO with the same amount of respect, then everyone should be able to. And that's what gets me really upset when people just don't follow that golden rule of be respectful. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Or there is a way to have hard conversations. I have them all the time when it comes to talent. When there's contracts that need to be abide, there's, things that were listed out with talent that we're supposed to do. And there's a way to approach it without being nasty. And so, I think that's something we still need to work on in this industry. I think people sometimes there's a little bit of a power play with what we do. But there's a way to approach things where we treat people with common courtesy and respect and say, listen, this is not what we agreed to. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's come up with something that, because I come from the world of negotiating where both sides are winning. No
Hmm.
one should ever feel that they're in a power play and they're not also getting something at it equally. So, I just think that working under like what John Ritter used to do is just treating people with common courtesy and respect. You get a lot, you just, it goes longer and you enjoy being on projects with people like that. And those that can't play the same ball game as you, they're not your people. They're not your
Well,
people.
I love that because my tendency is I grew up. I mean, I say Halifax. I grew up in Dartmouth, which is across the harbor from Halifax, and so our tendency is we've had some famous people come out of here, like Denny Doherty from the Mamas and the Papas is from here, but for the most part, big news to us is if a star comes in and goes, they're seen at some store and it makes local news. Forget about the 5 car pileup. Ben Affleck came to town, right? That's just the mentality here. So I've kind of grew up around, like I used to do a lot of stuff in hockey. So I've been around a lot of NHL pro players. So I don't get starstruck. That to me is just, you know what? They've had, they've got a particular talent I don't necessarily have. Good for
Sure.
them. I'm just not starstruck. So sometimes I get this, oh, well, you're aloof. No, I'm not aloof. I just like to treat people like they're all the same way. I find oftentimes a lot of the big stars are good people,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that I've met. They
Yeah.
have to keep people at arm's length for different reasons, stalkers, whatever. I don't want you to name names. I don't want you to name names, but is there one that comes to your mind that you go, this person absolutely, I would drop their name, is an amazing John Ritter, you just did. Who would,
Yep.
is there one that comes to mind that you can give an example of, wow, this is how
Yep.
you conduct your life, not just as a star?
Thing.
Okay.
Sting and his people. I absolutely love working with them. I had to rearrange some stuff for timing because he was in the middle of recording a record. And I love his publicist, Tracy, who's been with him forever. They're just, he's a brilliant mind. And when we had to rearrange something, we were working on a Stevie Wonder Message of Peace for Centric, and I was one of the producers on that. And I booked all, worked with the EP on it and worked with all the talent. And we had a schedule and we had to work through it, and the timing just wasn't going to work out. But in order for it to work out, we had to rearrange some things. And I made it happen. We worked with production. We were shooting in order, but we were able to shoot, we were able to move around some things in the schedule to get Sting in and out so we could go back to recording. And this is one of the first times I was working with him. And at the very end of it, he actually called for me by name and said, "Where is Raquel? I need to thank her." And it just, and he's racing to get in his car to go back to recording. And that's like set the standard, like just a simple thank you for the effort that I made for those few hours to try to make sure he got in and got out. And he and his team, his manager too, like they're just great to work with because I know. And then I booked him for Herb Albert is, I booked, they're respectful. It's kind of like a quid pro quo, but a very nice way about it. And it's just nice to be thanked because a lot of us as talent bookers and talent producers, we really don't always get the thanks. We get the blame. We don't get and
Right.
it's like without talent, there's no show, there's no movie, there's no nothing.
Right.
And people don't realize that putting folks on a stage took hundreds of hours of conversations, of negotiating, of who can they be a co-host with, who can they, what time can they be there? Like it's all the things that takes to get them to the Greek, right? Get them to the
Hmm.
stage. So Sting is one of them. And Alicia Keys, I'd say, is another one. And LL Cool J. I love working with all three of them because they say what they're going to do, and even if they're for whatever reason running late, they make the time up. They're just consummate professionals. Stevie Wonder is another one. And I just love being able to do that. Now I will tell you there's probably some reality TV folks that I'm okay with. It's those that truly have, and then there are reality people that actually had other careers that are great to work with. I'll leave that to its side.
Yeah. Yeah.
That are truly of their craft understand it's a long game and they have to be respectful of those that are in the game with them. And that's it says a lot about their character. But again, celebrities and musicians, but they're all people like you and I. It's no different. And that's why I approach them as as a regular person, because otherwise you get caught up in the starstruckness of it all. You're not going to get your job done.
I'm glad to ask that question because you probably changed my opinion, and it was an outward opinion of a few artists. I don't know if you saw the reel that was on recently. It was from when the police were getting ready to go out on tour, and Stuart Copeland does this wacky fill and freaks out. And obviously it's staged, but you get a little window, a little tiny
Right.
window of what it must have been like for the police when they were
Well,
working.
they had a marriage, and they
Uh,
had, when you have three very, well, two, people, I mean, I think that all three of them were brilliant, right? And sometimes you also have to create a pearl, and that is through pressure.
mm,
And it,
yeah.
it isn't always easy, but I have to tell you, I have nothing but respect for Sting. He came back and did the Disney holiday, especially. He's fantastic.
No, it's good you mentioned that because I get asked, everybody that I've met, I always have a saying. It's so nice to talk to somebody that I grew up admiring and borrowing from, and they're nice people. And then somebody asked me, "Have you ever met anybody that isn't like that?" And my only answer is yes. They rhyme with Lars Ulrich, and he's consistent. And I've met Lars a
Right,
number of times, and he's consistent. And that's all I'll say because it's not important. And
right.
no Lars, probably no metal drumming thing, and you got to give him that. So that's as nasty as we'll get on the show here today.
I know, and I get that. Listen, there's a few people I won't say, but there's a few people I have worked with, and um, you can't be disrespectful to the teams that are giving you a platform. You
Right.
just can't. You just can't because they're, yes, it's a job, but it's also their profession. And you meet I used to be like, I don't understand that expression. You meet the same people going up as you do coming down.
Yep.
And you just have to be respectful to the folks that are actually breaking their backs to give you a platform.
The true people get that. Um, Back to networking quickly for a second. So obviously I've been a studier of this, and I have a friend that calls it reverse networking, and I've done it too, where hey, Raquel, you're looking to meet somebody. I know that person. I'll make the connection and step aside, and where it goes, it goes. And um, there's this concept in music now where the thing of the audition has kind of gone away. So I'll give you an example. The Foo Fighters, when they had to replace Taylor Hawkins, they didn't hold auditions. They went out to their network. They said, "Who do we get?" And Josh Freese's name consistently came up. He gets the call. Is it like that in your business now, or do you still have to audition?
Um, it's like that when there's an intimate, when you're doing production. And when I mean intimate, I mean the fact that like when you are day in, day out with EPs and there's certain shows that are, top secret or we're doing NDAs, you want to work with a group of people that you can trust because the work is hard enough, right?
Sure.
So you want to have shorthand. It's almost like being in a band. You want to be in the band with a group of people that you can be like, have tough conversations with, make on, game day decisions that are going to be tough decisions, budget cuts, whatever it is. You need to be working with people that have your back. It's like that exercise they do with all the media training or what have you. It's like, fall back and making sure someone catches you. That, in production, it's not dissimilar to being in a band. You want to make sure that you can, fill in the gaps where you have to if God forbid something goes awry. And so there's a lot of times where we'll do, when we move from production to production, we'll have like, hey, I need a strong AP, I need a strong editor, I need a strong producer, and in my world, like I need people that I can trust. I mean, I've been going back to MTV now for 24 years. I left in 2005 and I still go back to do their tentpole shows because I work very closely with their talent departments, and there's always overarching deals that are happening, and I understand the intricacies and nuances of those deals, and I never want to get in the way of it. I want to get in there to help deliver what needs to be delivered for that show, but with respect to what the talent bookers are doing, because it's very delicate, especially when it comes to talent relations with artists and management and labels. You want to make sure that you have your ear to the ground and making sure that we have the landing strip to actually get there and what needs to happen, but respectfully. And so that's why we'll get a call for certain things because we know the nuances of that. Again, it's shorthand. Shorthand is really important. And that takes time to building up the trust with the team that you're with. So yes, I mean, do I like to have, of course, fresh names in the mix? Absolutely, because we always want to give people an opportunity. I'm always on the lookout for people that I can help also mentor and train along the ways. But I also need to, sometimes we'll get a call last minute, say, hey, I've got a gig for 2 weeks. I'm in the middle of one right now. I got the call on Friday. I'm already knee deep in it in the trenches with them because it has to get done really quickly.
Nice.
So I do, there is an element of, there's a trust, there's a shorthand, and we know that this person's going to get the job done because we know that they know that they're going to deliver.
Well, I'm not an actor, but I would like to think now that we've met that if you were ever asked to do a Sons of Anarchy reboot and you needed Biker Thug number three, that I would at least
Do you
get
ride a bike?
I don't, but I can
You can learn.
I can lean against one really well and look kind of mean and I joke, but no, and I think people need to, especially my people, need to hear because I sometimes I sound like a broken record, but I'm a big believer in take care of the people that you know and don't micromanage them on what happens with them. Like just
Yes,
give them the opportunity. If they frig you around, talk to them gently. If they do it again, that's it.
right.
Um, but it's important for other people to hear this message because some people that watch my podcast are aspiring to do what you do.
Mhm.
So it isn't to make me sound smart. It's to kind of tell them, hey, this is the way the world works, like it or lump it.
Yes, and I think you have to be, I always say, especially in my business, you have to be flexible but firm. You have to read a room. You have to know timing is everything. If you know that somebody just had a major tragedy, don't approach them with an offer or an ask. And you have to relay that back to your group. Don't wait too long. Say, well, I want to go after so and so. And it's like, well, right now, no, because they were just in the news for X, Y, and Z. I mean, you have to really stay on top of your business and understand what's happening. I mean, look, my husband asks all the time, he's like, do you have to watch like all the reality shows? I'm like, I don't have to watch all of them, but I have to be tapped in enough to know what's happening because I'll get
Sounds to
asked.
me like I get along really well with your husband.
But I mean, I laugh about it, but like, do I need to know what's happening in Real Housewives? Kind of, yeah, because
Yeah.
sometimes there's a show, there's a project I'm working on and they might want to ask them to be a part of it. But at the same time, it's also understanding the nuances of what's happening with an artist. Right now, are they at the end of a album launch? And right now they're going to go back to the studio. Like it's also understanding, taking information and relaying it back to your sometimes your clients and saying, look, there's been times where I had to actually let go of a client because they just weren't being reasonable. They weren't, no matter managing expectations, that's what I do all day long, but they just weren't willing to listen to like, look, this isn't going to happen. So let's shift a little bit and pivot and reverse engineer what we have to do. When they're not willing to even listen to you as a professional, then they're not your type of client, too.
No, and you don't want that because you don't want to add babysitting service to your already long list of things that you do. Um, One of the things I would like to ask you because it's a place where I fall down personally, and that's managing your time. I get a lot done. I'm effective. I'm a creature that needs an awful lot of people to help him move the ball. I'm very fortunate that I have a producer that helps me with my podcast. I have somebody that helps me with my scheduling. But if I leave it to my own devices, I am awful. Uh, is that a challenge for you, and how do you deal with that?
It's funny. I just came off of a group coaching call because, now I'm doing this other part of my business where I'm coaching creative executives, C-suite folks, and what have you. And one of the things I said to this young woman who was getting overwhelmed with her schedule, I said, listen, I'm a mom of two, a 6-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and I run a business and I
God
do.
love you.
It is, and I'm old, I'm an older mom. You have to schedule your time as if you're running a production. You just have to, and peel back, it's like, here's my end date, and now we have to, again, reverse engineer that and look back and do a schedule. So I do a brain dump in the beginning of the day, and then I do one at the very end of the day and look at my schedule and go, okay, this is where I have to schedule things out. Because if I don't, I'll be a disaster. But to that point, you and I had a hard time being able to schedule with you, and it took our friend Jamie to help me step in. She
Yep.
goes, "Yeah, I said yes, because unfortunately, it was one of those weeks where I had no control over what was going on. My husband was out of town working, one of my kids was sick, and I was like, I can't even think straight because everything just like the bowling ball came down and all the pins are down and I just didn't have time. So there are, we're human at the end of the day. So things um, do go awry. However, for the most part, keeping a calendar, making sure that all your calendars are synced up, making sure that you also take the time, whether it's 15 minutes in the day, 15 minutes at night to review what's coming up for the next day, not having analysis paralysis and going, oh my God, it wasn't perfect today. Move that to-do list to tomorrow. But it's also I schedule time to read. I'm reading Excavating Your Authentic Self right now. I'm going back to that book. I make sure I have my half-hour coffee breaks and I'm sitting there reading and learning, but making sure you're hitting all the different buckets when you're creative. I have my Wednesdays and Saturday nights where I DJ, and I know that those are the two nights, and now it's been built into our family schedule. My husband knows, okay, I mean, he's a great Mr. Mom outside of also working, but he knows Wednesdays and Saturdays, I'm pulling my vinyl, and he knows an hour out, I got to get the kids ready so that Raquel can go DJ. So it is just building it into your schedule and work, and then giving yourself grace around it as well. And
Yeah,
having a good team around you too that can help with that.
yeah, because like I record tracks for people. I do fill in work. I have two bands that I play with. I have a solo artist that I'm doing a lot of stuff with, and when I get an ask, I immediately go to the person that handles my schedule because I've double booked myself a number of times. And you get to the point, and it's almost like the Money Pit, the movie with Tom Hanks, where the bathtub
I
falls through,
quote
and
that movie all the time. I love
you
that.
know what I mean? The laugh, it's like, ah! So, and it only makes you look bad. And your scheduling thing, actually, I kind of got from your background that, hey, when we get it done, it's going to be a really cool, interesting conversation, and it has been. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I have
I'm
because
loving it. It's great.
well, I'm learning a lot too because I often I get to talk to different people, but I don't get to talk with somebody maybe as vast as a background as you. So it's interesting that the different sorts of things. You're like, how do I? You're like a big wheel that's spinning, and there's like little pieces coming into the wheel, and you're grabbing them, and they just go like it. That's the only way I can describe what you do.
A
Um,
British friend said it one time about me and my personality, because drive is basically my personality,
yeah,
if it gives you anything. But one thing he said, and it stuck with me, and he's kind of correct. He called me an all-rounder. And as a Brit, I'm like, an all-rounder, what? But it's basically having the ability to do many things at once. And I was like, I wear that stripe proudly, because I like to do many things. I like to always stay not relevant. I'm very hungry for knowledge. I'm always going to be a work in progress. I love to learn. That's just part of my nature. I'm a voracious reader. I love
yeah.
knowing about new music. So I take that as a compliment, and thank you for saying that. That means a lot.
Well, and I mean, we're similar in. I mean, I'm the type of guy. If I have too much time to think, I get myself in trouble.
Yeah.
I don't spend enough time staring at the wall, and I probably should. But I take on stuff that makes sense, I guess, to what I'm trying to do. And sometimes people, well, you shouldn't do that because you're a drummer. Well, you know what? If it fits into the kind of creative mold that I'm trying to do for myself,
Mhm.
why not? Who are you to tell me that I shouldn't be doing it? As long as I'm not hurting anybody else or I'm not doing anything immoral, whatever. You know what I mean?
None of your
And
business.
right, and so I like that aspect of what you're doing because you're also naming some stuff that and I will say you're younger than I am, so I can say this and not even feel like I'm insulting you. But you're talking about stuff that I grew up with, and I'm going like, man, that would have been cool to know Raquel back then. You
Great.
know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
it's all timing, and that's the one part of I guess life you be ready for a lot of stuff, and timing's the one part that you can't.
It is, but I'm going to ask you a question in return.
Okay.
And this is something that I've had to sit with, which is not an easy part of my vulnerability. Do you take a time out to put on your own oxygen mask and really like either meditate through music or something? And I know this is one to sit in. It's not an easy one when we're type A like that and do many things.
Right.
But have you taken the time for you to also be able to work through things creatively or what have you, so that you're able to breathe a little better?
What a great question. And I'll initially say no. What I've started to do on, you mentioned your Wednesdays and Saturday night DJ nights. I've started on Sundays and Thursdays after 6 o'clock, putting my phone down and not even looking at it. Um, I'm not one of those people that are have to see what's going on social media. However, a lot of what I do is tied to that. And I find that Friday and Monday I wake up, I don't want to punch somebody in the face sometimes, which is good for a lot of people, not only myself. Um, the one part that I am told a lot that I don't, and actually Jamie, God love her, she did this wonderful thing for me. I was talking to her a couple weeks ago, and people close to me say I don't take enough time to look back. I'm always looking forward, and I don't have this and this person's, and so I don't look at everything. And I mean, I've only been doing this aspect of things 4 years. I've been a drummer my whole life, and I've had a good career doing that. But this social media podcast thing, when I do look back, and Jamie sent me this thing of everything I've been able to accomplish in 4 years, I'm like, okay, you know what, asshole, and I apologize for swearing. Like, life ain't so bad. Like, take it in, right? So, I don't enough. I guess it's a long-winded answer.
Because then you get burnout, and as we get older, I think it's really important to take a time out and a reset. And I've had to do that in times where I just don't have the creativity to go on a Wednesday or a Saturday too. I'm like, I am just plumb exhausted and I'll be no good to anybody. So I
Yep.
need to breather. And it's important as a creator and creative to do that for you, because we're always giving to other people. And especially now that I'm a mom of two on top of everything else, I have to, because otherwise I got nothing left to give. So that's why I would say to you, because I know how it's easy to just keep going, 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 going. But you also have to take the time for you to reset and recharge.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I mean, one of the things I unfortunately get caught up in, and I'll on my side of the street when I'm doing something to kind of have to own my side of the street. But with what I do in a certain part of the promotion, I get people who all they want to do is promote themselves and promote themselves and promote themselves. And then the second you miss something that they want to promote and you promote your own self, then you're
Mhm.
this terrible person. And I get into that a lot, where I've just had to say, "To heck with you guys, man! Like, you're not bringing anything to my current situation. I'm working my ass off to try to help you, and you're
Right.
not seeing the value in it." So I've become better at doing that, but that's a tough one, right? Because you don't want to offend people, but some
Right.
people, I guess, are meant to be offended. I guess is the only way I can describe it,
They're
right?
not meant to be in your circle. And I think, I went to Japan in February, and it was a real life altering experience. I went there for Crunchyroll. I was there the Anime Awards, and I booked Megan Thee Stallion and a few other people. But I also knew, like, Japan was, I had been dreaming of Japan. I'd been like, I had a pagoda in my dream, and it was like ever, it was just always in my dream for years. And I actually went and saw the actual pagoda. It took my breath away when I saw it. I'm like, that's been in my dreams. Like, I'm very spiritual, and I also believe like I must have lived in Kyoto at one point. But um, I think one of the things that helped me, it there's such a beauty in staying in the moment that they have as a culture. Like, even when they give their business card, it's with two hands and you have to receive it with two hands. Like, it's a real exchange of energy,
Hmm.
an exchange of respect for the other soul on the other side of you. And I think that we forget a lot of that here, and in just in the Western society. And it really, like, I felt so at ease and at home there, because there's such a respect for also being engaged in the moment. And I am very easily, like, I have my cell phone, I'm easily distracted. And one of the things my husband said to me is like, no phones at the dinner table. That's all I ask of you. And I was always like on it. And still to this day, I try to not do that.
Yeah.
Um, but it's being engaged and in the moment, and also sitting with yourself and being okay with that, which is sometimes not easy for us when we're always going, going, going. So that's why I asked the question, because I could see I have a kindred spirit on the other side of the screen, and I see you, and it's just making sure you take the investment in your own time for you.
Well, and I do appreciate that, because again, I'm uh my personality is actually, I could stare at the wall for 30 minutes. I just don't. The pedal is always on, or the foot's always on the gas pedal, right? So no, I do appreciate that, because I am nothing if not self-aware. I'm just not quickly and acutely self-aware sometimes, if that makes sense.
I hear that
Yeah, yeah.
100%. And my other question for you is,
Uh-oh.
what What would you say your top two bands of all time are? I mean, I see one of them behind
Well,
you, but
definitely Kiss.
yeah,
The second one, I would have to say either Van Halen or AC/DC, and for the same reason but different. Uh, so what you're seeing, and this is just my personal opinion, and send the cards and hate mail to Sean at whatever, but Alex Van Halen to me is one of the all-time most underrated drummers. Had he been in any other band, he would have been studied. He would have been, and he still is to some point. And you're seeing a little bit of that now with Wolfgang, where it's like if he was Wolfgang Smith from Idaho, would he get? And I again, hate me if you want. That's just what my beliefs. AC/DC, because Phil Rudd, when I was growing up, first learning how to play drums, everybody used to talk about him not being a good drummer, and the dude is a human metronome. He's just an absolutely unbelievable player. I put him in the category of like a Don Henley, where he sounds like he's easy to copy, and then you try it and you listen to your playback of you trying it, and it just sounds like a drum kit falling down a flight of stairs. So I would say probably Van Halen and AC/DC would be, Kiss for sure. And I mean, again, cards and letters and haters, because I get a lot of slack for that, but whatever.
I know.
I
I love them too.
unapologetically, but yeah, those would probably be my top ones there.
So because you're a drummer, I have to give a shout. Well, first of all, I'm probably one of the very few women that would be at a Rush show.
Oh, Neil Peart.
I mean, just the absolute best. But two drummers that are in my life that I absolutely love, and I have to give them a shout out because I know them personally. They're friends of mine, and they're just underrated to me. One of them is Bobby Schayer, who used to be in Bad Religion.
Okay.
Brilliant drummer. And the other one is my good friend who I've known for years, and I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and that is Johnny Craig from Space Hog, one of the most dynamic drummers live. I mean, he was just and he just is one of my favorite drummers to watch live. And he's a friend. And it's not because he's my friend, just because I would be so wowed by every one of his performances.
So I never do this. I mean, I say I never do this because when I interview somebody, I never want somebody to have the opinion that I'm talking to them to get to somebody else. So that's not about that. But if there's anybody that you ever want me to talk to, 100%. Because you mentioned Clem Burke, and he to me, one of the call me. I always had a hard time with the hi-hat pattern, and I learned it because I finally found a YouTube video years and years and years ago about him playing it. But one of the original bashers that actually knew what the hell he was doing. And I tell you, I had an opportunity to interview Liberty DeVito. And what an amazing opportunity that was. He was just 1 second. I just unplugged myself. He his his manager, yeah, Lib can give you 15 minutes. We get to the 15-minute part, and he's like, I got nothing to do. Let's keep going. And it was just a beautiful 2-hour talk. He was 72 at the time, and he had just had a baby or something. And it's just incredible. And and then I interviewed Russell Javers from Billy Joel's band. And Russell said what you said. Why the heck is it that when everything is ready to get cut, music and arts are always the first to go? It's just incredible, right?
I hate it.
Incredible.
I hate it because it's really it's a language that really needs to be understood better. I mean, creativity is the most important. Everything is born from creativity. So why take that away?
100%.
But I absolutely, I mean, Clem is just an extent. I mean, it is effortless watching Clem, and I've known Clem a long time. So that, I mean, I absolutely can chat with him. I used to manage this. That's how I got to meet Glenn. It was Earl Slick, Clem Burke, and Glenn Matlock along, that was called Slinky Vagabond. And it was Keenan, who was a designer for David Bowie, and the four of them played, and it was just brilliant. But knowing Clem for as long as I have, he doesn't slow down. He's just incredible. Really.
Love him.
Yeah.
Well, we could do this all day, and unfortunately, I'm only an hour program here on the Rock Rage Radio Network. But if you get a couple minutes after this, when I press stop, I'd love to chat with you for a couple more minutes. Raquel Bruno, you have been as advertised for my friend Jamie Roberts. I just had I didn't even feel like that was an over an hour conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, I felt it was like 10 minutes.
I know, right? More to come. Maybe a part two. Tune in next week, kids. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.